Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Sunday morning chat today, back to some sort of normality, although this is going to be a bit more practical and I might have to take the camera down off the tripod. And therein lies the point that I made a while back in a video: don't mess about too early in the day. I put the camera on the tripod and I hadn't secured it properly, and as I walked out into the grow room I knocked the leg and the camera fell off. Now if that had been early on the day, that had gone straight down to the floor. As it happened, I caught it as it fell, so it didn't fall on the floor. It would have landed on the carpet and probably bounced, but you know, it's better not to throw them around. They're not designed for that sort of thing. So yeah, wait till you're awake before you do stuff. And if you're going to secure a camera to a tripod, secure it. Don't half do the job. Right, a couple of things. A while back I mentioned that if you've got a new channel and you'd like me to take a look and have a bit of a plug, I'd be happy to do it. I've got a list and I'm not doing it today. I will get to it, you're not forgotten. Okay, and because I've got a list, I'm going to have to cross things off, or I'm going to do things twice or not at all. So channels. Right, next thing is a point of order. A good friend of mine on YouTube has got upset and is taking a break from YouTube. Now I've seen this happen before and I'm sure I will probably see it again in the future. It nearly got me once. I'm quite hard-nosed. You've got a job to upset me. You'll know when I'm upset. It goes very quiet. And the expression, "I will find you," springs to mind. Anyway, a friend has got upset, and I think on reflection he's thought better of what happened. It's too late. All you can do is try and deal with it. And the best advice I can offer is don't let it get to you. That's easily said, isn't it? If it already has, it's too late to say daft things like that. But at the end of the day, it's a social media platform, and as those platforms go, it's one of the best behaved you can join in with. Unlike some others I could mention that can get quite nasty. And it can be hurtful. Now some people are more sensitive than others, and they may have reasons for that. All I can say is if something appears to be getting out of hand and you're in the thick of it, walk away. It's not a big deal. Your opinions are your own. If you wish to put them forward and somebody disagrees, agree to disagree, but walk away. Let it go. Let it drop. I've lost some people on YouTube already due to them getting so upset about things they lose sleep and stuff like that. We don't need it. So I don't know who was involved or what was involved, but I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt, didn't have a logo on, but you know what I mean. Just let it go. Make a big deal out of things that really don't matter that much. At the end of the day, it's just plants. And there is no one way to grow an orchid. There are many ways. Yeah? And they can all be good, and just because your way is different to somebody else's doesn't mean they're wrong. If they're killing all their plants, maybe they are. But I don't know anybody who's in that boat. We all have a few losses now and again. We all have some plants that struggle. But we have some that do okay too. That's the name of the game. Don't get personal in comments. Stick to the orchids and the culture and everything else around the subject. Keep it a happy place. Right, that's my 5 eggs, 5 cents, whatever you want to call it. And moving on to, I was going to say a lighter note, but it's just as flipping serious, but it's plants. Oh, it's getting cold already. Concentrate, Roger. I'm coming back to this. Now I've done something unusual on my channel. Normally I deal with all my comments first thing in the morning while I'm waking up and I can't knock anything over. All I I do is spell things wrong, type things wrong, which autocorrect does a reasonable job in fixing for me, although that can cause hassles. Even in a comment that can cause a hassle. You can get an autocorrect, put a word in that you didn't mean, it alters the meaning of your comment and makes it sound rude. Read them through first, then hit send. Or reply, or whatever media platform you're on. Anyway, coming back to this and the associated hassles with those deformed blooms. Thanks for all your ideas. There's some good ones in there and some I hadn't thought of. And thanks to a couple of people, Zaina specifically for a really good article, and somebody who sent me quite a long write-up and an article in private email. If I can get at those two, I'll put them in the description for others to read. You read, analyse and choose what you wish to do about it. I'm not telling you that these articles are right and are right in this case specifically. But this is what I want to come on to. Okay? I've got a list of all the comments, a lot of which were repeated, so we'll get that to one side. We'll just go over the points, fors and against. Now some I'm going to exclude and cross them off the list, but I don't just do that, I'll explain why. Right, good selection. Excuse me, more coffee, come on. Use your own expression, boy. I've got a dry throat today, I must admit. Somebody put a comment, too much seaweed. Now in this case, unlikely, so I'm going to exclude it, but it is a valid point. You chuck too much hormonal stuff into your plants and you can screw them up. And I have seen distorted blooms as a result of using seaweed extract in excess. Now I've been adding some of that this year for the first time, but when I add it to a batch of feed and everybody gets it. So I'm excluding that specifically, especially as I don't add much and I don't add it very often. I've stopped doing it now, so for the time of year, not because I don't like it. So good suggestion and valid, but I don't think it's valid in this particular case. Something I'd never heard of. Spontaneous somatic mutation. I have to look that one up. But this is just where cells, or a cell, just mutates. I mean, we get it as people, you know, lumps coming out in places where they shouldn't be and stuff like that. So, yeah, a cell that goes wrong and then passes on its mutation to surrounding cells and causes a problem. It's a rare occurrence in plants, but nonetheless it does occur. And that, I'm not crossing that one off as it's not that, because it could be. But I got no way of proving it and no way of dealing with it specifically. Although what I am going to do in a minute would probably deal with it. But yeah, interesting one that. Along those lines, use of systemic chemicals. Now this I know to be true. Things like systemic fungicides, systemic pesticides can cause deformities. You're adding stuff into the plant that shouldn't be there. And although it's deemed safe, as we all know with all things deemed safe, how safe? 100% can never be guaranteed. So it could be that. You have to bear in mind, you know, things have been treated during the year. Things haven't had the fungicide since back at the beginning of the year. So I would imagine any problems that may have caused would have grown through the plant by now, and you know, the plant would have dealt with it on its own. Still a possibility though, but it hasn't affected anything else. That doesn't mean to say it's not that. So that's that one out of the way. Chemicals and systemics. What's gone wrong, certainly on those blooms, which were buds once, does point to thrips. And in their larval stage, you've got a job to see them. Yeah? But they do have an adult stage. Flying insects, annoying little tykes, yeah? And I haven't seen any, which I said last time round. But think about it. What about if a few thrips had got in here and got on a plant, and grubs had dug their way into buds and things, followed by the systemic treatment? They never made it to adulthood. I'm going to put that down as a remote possibility, because if you get thrips in an enclosed environment like this, certainly back in the growing season, they'd have probably gone mad and they'd have been all over the place. They can be quite a problem to get rid of. So thrips that are long since dead but could have done the damage. It's a remote possibility. I don't think so, but it's still a possibility. Can't exclude it, can I? If the bugs are dead, how do I know they were ever here? Ugh, that's that one. Right. The next one is genetic mutation. Now this does happen. It's more prone to the more complex hybrids where they've got so much genetics into them, poor old plant can't make up its mind what it's going to do with them. And you'll often get a growth that will come out just wrong. I mean, I've seen an oncidium with a new growth pushing out the top of the pseudobulb. It's just wrong. It shouldn't do that. But it did, you know. So genetic mutation is a possibility. Again, how do you prove it? Impossible. And that could be a one-off on one plant that the plant resolves itself from, and it doesn't happen again. Now, I've seen it happen on first-time bloomers, but it tends to be the more complex hybrids where the blooms just don't come out right. And next time round, they're fine, and they're fine forevermore. So first-time bloomer syndrome. I've just made that up. Don't look it up. So that's a possibility. Difficult to prove yet again. We'll get onto the stuff we might be able to do something about in a minute. Right. I did mention as a hint about my problem found when I was calibrating my new pH and TDS meter. Disregard the TDS meter, there was nothing wrong with that, but the pH meter that I was using was far out, a long way out. The consequence of it being out, first of all, I don't know for how long. Yeah, could have been going on some time, may not have been. I can't prove that either. But the consequence of that pH being out in the direction it was in, the pH of the feed that I'd been using for an amount of time unknown was far too low, quite acidic. I mean, when I was aiming for one of my low pHs, around the 5.8, because I don't go any lower than that, mainly because I've got organic media and it's going to drop a bit on the mount or in the pot anyway, so I don't go any lower than that. But given how far that pH meter was out, if I'd gone for a 5.8, I'd have ended up probably lower than 4. That's pretty grim. There's no such thing as a pH of 4 in the natural environment from rain until it gets on the ground and sort of hits acidic bases or becomes stagnant or something like that. Rainwater is somewhere between 7 and 6.8 under normal circumstances, but it depends what it landed on and ran over before it was caught and tested. So it can become a bit more acidic or even alkaline depending on what it falls on. You know, you get the rainwater comes down with a pH of say 6.9 on chalk hills and you measure a little stream, you'll find it up around 8 or even higher because of what it was associated with. So the wrong pH is a possibility, but why just affect one plant and not all of it? So unlikely, although when I showed some roots a while back that had some brown staining, that's a possible. Luckily we came towards the end of the season and I started flushing a lot more frequently. I mean, my mounts at the moment get flushed twice and fed low once because they're not doing much, they're not growing. Some of them don't get any feed at all, so if they get any water it's just water. Yeah? So had there been a problem in the pots, it should have been washed out by now, and with the new pH meter calibrated, it shouldn't happen again. Right? So pH. Now, as associated with feeding at an incredibly low pH, I'd have been locking out some nutrients. So there could be a nutrient deficiency involved, but again, other plants have spiked and bloomed successfully during this same period of time, unaffected. That doesn't mean it's wrong. It's still a could be, but unlikely. You know, I mean, if you think about non-mobile nutrients, if there was a deficiency due to a lockout of a silly pH, there's a possibility, but it would have affected other stuff as well. So nutrient deficiency, I'm getting off the list. Right, now we're down to the more serious stuff. Nice little bit of frivolity from Milan. He said it could be Russia or China, seeing as they get the blame for everything else nowadays. I like that. I don't agree with it, but all blaming a country for what a few politicians or special forces or secret service are doing. That's not the country's fault, is it? It's individuals. It just tickled me. I liked it. Russia or China. Yeah, I was just checking they're not in here. Could be listening. Right, we've done the first time bloom liking hybrids type thing. Unfortunately, that leaves two. Both are not only possible, both are probable. But to differentiate between the two needs kit, which I haven't got. Right, so now we're down to a virus or Fusarium. That's what's left. Both are viable, and I'd say both could be probable. So I'm not crossing these off, these stay. Right. And also, just as a matter of talk about coincidences, Todd put a video up this morning, what's wrong with this picture? And he's got an orchid with a spike with a number of blooms on. Now we all know the structure of orchids, the standard orchid blooms. Yeah, you get 2 petals and a lip and 3 sepals that were once the bud. Yeah, so that's 5 sticky out bits and a lip. And one of his blooms has only got 3 sticky out bits. It's got no petals. Yeah, the other blooms on the spike are okay. So it happens. It's not just me, is it? It's not just this plant. That's another example of something getting a bit wrong on the blooms. His colour rendition on that plant would be difficult to spot colour break because of the plant it is. It's got tiny little very thin petals and sepals and a white lip. It's difficult to see colour break on a white lip. It tends to show as darker and or lighter patches and streaks. Well, when you've got colour, that's obvious, but when it's white, can you have a darker white and a lighter white? Right, so we're down to the other two. Fusarium, possibility. The plant once had it. Is that expression correct? No. What you do with a systemic fungicide, it is a fungus, not a virus, Fusarium, yeah, is you stop it spreading. You don't get rid of it, you stop it spreading. In other words, you stop it replicating. So, in theory, you stop it. But do you? Can you ever guarantee you've got the lot? Yeah? Now, given the way Fusarium works, it congregates in the base of the pseudobulbs and the rhizomes. That's where the highest infection lies. That's where it likes to be. That's its comfort zone. And as such, it blocks the pathways. So nutrients and hydration can't get through properly. Yeah? And as a consequence of where it is, it stops roots growing properly as well. So the normal signs are reduced vigour, new growths failing, and new roots pushing out for a short while and then just stopping. and getting a brown tip on them for no apparent reason. So those are the main symptoms. That's also a symptom because what's going on down here is stopping that developing properly. Now what did this spike do? It developed incredibly slowly and pushed out deformed blooms. It also didn't form the bulb properly. This is an immature, undersized bulb, as was its predecessor, as opposed to the other end of the plant, which quite honestly is going mad. What we've got up the other end of the plant is the latest new growth with the broken spike, with 3 new growths pushing out. And blow me, I've just noticed the previous bulb's got a new growth pushing out. That's 4 up that end of the plant with proper sized pair of pseudo bulbs. But then there's a bit of a gap with the oldest bulb sat there strapped to the mount. So that was obviously there when it was mounted because that's the one I strapped, and it pushed off in 2 directions. In this direction it didn't do very well, and it's got worse. I highly suspect that, bearing in mind I haven't used the systemic fungicide since earlier in the year, it may have broken out again on this one. That can happen. Just because you think you've treated it, you've got no guarantee. It's not 100% treatment. So that's a good possibility. Yeah? So what do I do about it? Well, you know what I'm going to do about it, don't you? But unfortunately, if I do that, I will have to then follow it on to be able to resolve the other possibility, which is a virus. The most common virus in this type of plant is the Odontoglossum ring spot virus, or ORSV as it's abbreviated. Everybody loves their abbreviations, don't they? Can't be bothered to say the words. But it is quite prevalent, it's around, and it's another one of those things, a bit like Fusarium to a degree. It can live in a plant and the plant can fight it off and be quite successful for quite a long period of time until the plant gets stressed. When it gets stressed, things like Fusarium and viruses seem to get a grip, and the plant's defences are down, so it wins. Yeah? Whereas before it was being held off. So the death of a plant due to a virus could go over many, many years, especially on a mount where you don't tend to disturb it. Now, quite honestly, this plant, the only stress this plant's had this year is a bit too much light. That is a level of stress because it has to work much harder with its photosynthesis and everything, and to get the chlorophyll going, to get the colour green in the leaves, so it works a bit harder. So it is a form of stress. But it wouldn't have had any of the other stresses, like a bad root system, total lack of nutrients, no water, you know, there's various other things, too cold, too hot. Well, it's been hot in here. Now, was it hot at the same time it was perhaps getting too much light? Possibly. 2 stresses now. So that's a possibility. If it was a virus, at the moment it's only showing on those blooms. That is possible. And no sign of it on the leaves anywhere. So should I exclude it and go with the Fusarium? Well, if I go with the Fusarium, I can deal with it now. If I go with the possibility of a virus, I'm going to need some kit. I'm going to need a test kit. And one person has sent me a link to a site where I can buy them, and apparently they're not ridiculously expensive. Now, as a YouTube video, that would be a good one to do. And bearing in mind all the stuff to do with my orchids and kit related stuff comes out of the YouTube money. So I haven't got to put my hand in Roger's meagre little pocket. So I can do that now, and I'm going to. Now, virus. One of the big spreaders, so I'm going to put this down and make my hand ache and grab my coffee. One of the big spreaders of that particular virus, believe it or not, is aphids. I don't have them, do I? Yes, I do. You remember the brassicas I brought back from my Burnham's trip? The blooms were covered in them. Poor old Sarah was so apologetic. Oh, I've been trying to get rid of these, I just haven't got round to it properly. And I said, it's all right, it's only flipping aphids, I can shift them in no time. Which I did, but no time wasn't really no time. They did move around the grow room. And what happens with aphids is, unfortunately, that particular virus, the ORSV virus, can survive on their mouth parts. So when they bite into another plant, they can spread it. They are one of the main bloody spreaders. The other one is us, people, not using sterilised tools and stuff like that. Yeah, that's us, you know. But basically, viruses get into a plant through damaged tissue, like little bitey holes. Yeah? It would still have to come from one plant to get to another plant. So that's a possibility now. And as a consequence, I've got to backtrack. Because while those aphids were in here, they did move. And they did get on some other spikes that were on the go during that period. Miltonia sunset, Catatanti, the two that definitely spring to mind. They were obviously on both of the brassicas. Yeah? They got on my Sotoanum. Yeah? So the aphids, before they were decked, were on other bloom spikes. Not on the plants specifically, but they went for some of the other bloom spikes. And a lot of it was because I collected them together over here, where, you know, on my little display area, so that I could see them. You know, I spread it in some respects. So I'm not excluding Fusarium, and I'm definitely not excluding the ORSV virus. So those two remain. I'm going to tick those because it means I've got something to do. Right, we've done Todd. Right, so that's the list done. Right, action. Now the obvious thing to do is take that bloom spike off, isn't it? Oh, that's a really, really difficult job. I know you're not going to like this because there's a bud not open yet. Chances of that bud opening clean, I would suggest, are 0. So that's that job done. Unfortunately, that's not it, is it? We need the big stuff. I know it's gone on the floor, I'll sort that out in a minute. Right, coming back from here, back to the original bulb and the bulbs that head off in 2 directions. Now don't forget, this bulb here actually bloomed, and there was nothing wrong with those blooms. That was quite a long time ago, right? So, do I declare that bulb okay and the rest not? Nope, we're coming right back to the base of the plant. So I've taken that off. So that's now removed from the plant, leaving the rest of the plant intact. Is that a good idea? No. Why isn't it a good idea? Where was the original infection? There. Now if it's managed to spread out in this direction, what's to stop it going in the other direction? Now this is a bit of a decimation, but that bulb's coming off as well. So we're going right back and taking out every part of the old plant, leaving the new bit, which has got its own set of roots. I'm going to have to cut the tie now to get it off. So the rest of the plant's firmly attached, that won't matter. So I'm going to take that bulb out completely. Cool, that really has attached, that one. Oh, gotcha. Actually, that didn't come out very well, did it? It's left the rhizome in there with its roots. The bulb just snapped off, so we'll pull that out. I need 2 hands, so let's do it properly. Otherwise we're going to pull the rest of the roots off. But I want that plant out. Oh, that really has attached. This is brute strength. I know you can't see it. Gotcha. Right. So what we've got left now is a growth that pushed out with a new growth. a mature bulb that nearly flowered with 3 new growths. So next year I suspect that's going to grow on and bloom, possibly several spikes. Am I going to treat it for Fusarium? Of course I am. Twice at least. Now looking at the rhizome, there is a bit of pink showing. I would expect that. Yeah, it's only a bit. I probably won't be able to show you that because of the light. But it's on the end of my finger and I doubt if you'll see the coloration on it. But it is there, slightly. So that's that bit. To be treated. Now if we're going to go down the virus route, I've got to keep that going, haven't I, until such time as a kit can arrive. So I'm going to keep that, and how do I keep it? Do I want to separate it again? Because what I've got here is on this rhizome, well, again I doubt you'll be able to see it at a light level, but on this rhizome here, oh, where's my camera? Yeah, you can see there's a tiny tinge of pink around the outside, but if you look there on the end of my finger, that little bit of the rhizome is bright purple. So did some escape and manage to find one little pathway to get out into this part of the plant. It's quite possible, yeah. So I need to keep this alive to be able to do a virus test, and how much of it would be viable to keep it going long enough for the virus kit to arrive. And the answer is I've either got to keep all of it. All I'm going to do is stick this in a pot with some small bark and some moss. That's all I'm going to do with this, just to keep it alive basically. Or do I take this bulb off? I would be interested to see what's the other side of that bulb on that bit of rhizome, but that doesn't leave me a lot of roots to keep the plant alive with. But okay, if it stops growing and it's not actively growing, I can keep a few of those roots. I'm going to take that bit off as well. Let's have another look the other side of that bulb and see what we've got. I know you're all going to complain that I didn't sterilise between each cut, but if it's got Fusarium, there's not a lot of bloody point, is there? Excuse my French. And it's the same again, the same pattern on this bit. It's exactly the same pattern. Right, so that's the bit with our bright bit of purple on one bit. Now let's have a look at the new cut. So I'm just cleaning some bits off so that you can see. I'd put that down to normal discoloration. I don't think it's got a hold in this plant. Maybe it tried. Maybe there's still a little bit in there. But you have to bear in mind that some plants have got a natural coloration around the very, very edge of the rhizome. When you get Fusarium, it tends to move inwards from that edge and become more like a band rather than a tiny little bit of colour around the outside, the very outside. So I'm not confident that is full of Fusarium. But what we'll do is we'll put it in a little pot just to keep it alive, and then when the test kit comes along, we will get this one out and we'll get the other plants out where the aphids got. Now I don't think the aphids ever went near this flipping plant, but one way to find out. I've never done a test before, so it'll be a nice little video to do, won't it? Right, so that's the action done. A bit dramatic you might think. Not finished yet. That part needs treating, that's the bit I'm keeping. That's going to go off the end of the mount now. Would this be a good time to reposition it back there? No. It's already had a major disturbance, hasn't it? Let's let it go. Let these new growths produce their new roots, set up a new root system on this part of the mount, and then possibly cut the mount in half, because this bit ain't going to ever have any plants on it, is it? And this is the big bit, the bit sticking out. It's a slightly odd shaped mount, that one. Right, so that needs treating. Now, the other thing is, you could ask, if I've said that viruses can be spread with aphids, in theory, transferring scale, the crawler stage, from one plant to another, in theory that could do it. It's still damaged tissue, but whether they can carry it or not, I don't know. But I know that aphids can. Yeah, maybe scale can't. Maybe the virus doesn't survive on their mouth parts, I don't know, but it does on, aphids. Right, so, bit of fun and games. Nothing's ever simple, is it? If everything was simple and ran smoothly, I wouldn't have a very good channel, would I? You've got to have a problem now and again. And quite honestly, that video showing those blooms sparked off a lot of comments. For people to have produced the comments meant they'd had to think about it, which means those thoughts have gone from just me to a crowd of people now, and those thoughts can stay with those people. This is what a lot of YouTube is all about. It's the sharing is not only about the good stuff. Oh, I've got some pretty blooms, look, here they are. Well, if you just did that every day, it wouldn't be much of a channel, would it? I know people like to see the blooms, but we need to know about the plants as well, and the looking after them, and the things that can go wrong. Now, a virus is a big deal because there is no cure. And you get that out in no uncertain terms. If your plant's got a virus, there is no cure. So should you take it out in the yard and set fire to it? Most would say yes, and I'll probably agree, because it's never going to get better. Unlike with Fusarium, where it can grow away from it, it's in the plant with a virus. There is no cure. So it's never going to fully recover. But, like I said, some plants can survive with it reasonably well for quite a long period of time. But if you keep it in a collection, you do have the possibility of it spreading. So what's the best thing to do? Yeah, you're right. Dump it, quite honestly. But I wouldn't do it on a whim, because lots of other things can look like a virus when it's not. So you could end up binning what could have been a plant you could have recovered. It might have cost you quite a bit of money as well. So don't go mad. But I'm going to get the set of test kits. As I said, YouTube can pay for that, because it'll come to me and then it will go back out into YouTube, so it's good stuff. And we'll have a go at doing some virus tests, and we'll see whether I'm going to get annoyed or not. If I test 6 plants and they've all got it, I got a problem. If I test 6 plants and it's in one of them, I've got 1 plant to bin, haven't I? If I test 6 plants and it's in all 6 of them, how many more do I test? Yeah? Yeah. We'll worry about that when it happens. No good worrying too much about something before it happens, unless it leads you to preventative medicine. And certainly with viruses, sterilise your kit, yeah, and your pots, everything. Don't transfer it yourself, even if you don't know you've got it. On the side of caution, yeah. We are the biggest spreaders of viruses, quite honestly, in collections. Especially when you do a mammoth repot where you do 10 plants. It only needs one of them at the beginning of that set of events to have got a virus, and you don't sterilise in between, and you will pass it on. You start trimming roots and cutting rhizomes and stuff. You'll do it, you'll spread it. So go steady. And that's not a cheery video. There's a couple of negatives in there, but that's life. And on that subject, when we're down, we stay there for a bit and we pick ourselves up. Famous line from a Batman film. Why do we fall? So that we can pick ourselves up and try again. You listening? Talking to you. We'll see you soon, and look after yourself. And everybody else, of course, as well. And I'll see you next time.